You wake up, swing your legs over the edge of the bed, and brace yourself for the familiar morning stiffness, quietly accepting the narrative that growing old simply means managing a slow, irreversible physical decline. The mainstream medical establishment tells you that your lingering fatigue, your aching joints, and your subtle brain fog are the inevitable price of passing 60. They hand you a growing collection of orange prescription bottles, fully expecting you to trade your hard-earned retirement savings for medications that merely mask the symptoms of your deterioration. But the real culprit behind your accelerated aging is not a sudden, mysterious lack of synthetic chemicals in your bloodstream, nor is it a biological clock that has simply run out of sand. The truth is that we are living in a profound evolutionary mismatch. Your body possesses ancient, incredibly powerful genetic repair systems that are designed to keep you vibrant, mobile, and cognitively sharp well past your 9th decade. However, these survival genes have been completely deactivated by the highly processed, incredibly sedentary, and deeply isolated modern lifestyle we have been conditioned to accept as normal. The conventional healthcare system focuses entirely on artificially managing your decline because teaching you how to physically reactivate your body's innate longevity pathways does not generate recurring revenue. Today, we are going to bypass the pharmacy entirely and look to the world's blue zones regions where people routinely live past 100 years old in excellent health. We will explore 3 heavily researched, fiercely protected longevity rituals practiced daily by centenarians. These interventions rely entirely on manipulating your environment to signal your cells to repair themselves, and they cost absolutely nothing. By the time we finish our conversation, you will understand the precise cellular mechanisms of these habits and exactly how to use them to reclaim your biological youth. Before we dive into the specific biochemistry of these natural interventions, I want to formally welcome you to our community. If you are tired of generic medical advice that relies solely on symptom management, and you want to understand the actual biology of how your body ages and heals, consider subscribing to our channel. We focus on the evidence-based health strategies that mainstream medicine often overlooks in favor of a quick prescription. I always enjoy learning about the people who tune in and sharing this journey together, so please drop a comment below and tell me, where are you watching from today? And what has been the most frustrating piece of aging advice a doctor has ever given you? We will begin our exploration with a dietary practice that fundamentally alters how your cells manage their own waste, acting as an ancient metabolic switch that literally consumes your cellular garbage. For decades, the dietetic industry has aggressively instructed older adults to consume 3 large meals a day, interspersed with multiple snacks, to allegedly keep blood sugar stable and prevent the metabolism from slowing down. This advice completely ignores the evolutionary biology of human digestion. Throughout the vast majority of human history, our ancestors survived through natural cycles of feast and famine. When you eat from the moment you wake up until the moment you go to sleep, you trap your body in a perpetual fed state. Physiologically, this means your insulin levels remain constantly elevated, and a specific nutrient-sensing pathway called mTOR remains highly active. The mTOR pathway signals your cells to continuously grow and synthesize new proteins. While growth is essential for children, unchecked cellular growth in an older adult accelerates the accumulation of biological junk, fuels systemic inflammation, and feeds the development of tumors. Centenarians in places like Okinawa, Japan, practice a completely different rhythm. They observe a cultural rule called hara hachi-bu, which dictates stopping a meal when they are only 80% full, and they naturally experience prolonged periods without food from their early dinner until the next morning. When you intentionally stop consuming calories for an extended window, your insulin levels naturally drop to their baseline. This hormonal shift deactivates the mTOR growth pathway and triggers a profound survival mechanism known as macroautophagy. Autophagy translates to self-eating. It is your body's highly intelligent, internal cellular recycling program. Without incoming food, your cells begin looking internally for energy. They construct specialized membranes called autophagosomes that hunt down damaged mitochondria, oxidized lipids, and the misfolded proteins that are directly linked to neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's. The cell consumes this toxic debris, burns it for fuel, and uses the raw materials to build fresh, healthy cellular structures. The scientific validation of this physiological recycling process is extensive and completely disrupts the narrative that you must eat constantly to remain healthy. Researchers at the Salk Institute for Biological Studies published a landmark investigation in the prestigious journal Cell Metabolism that demonstrated the absolute power of this mechanism. The researchers took aging subjects and restricted their eating to a strict 10-hour window, forcing a 14-hour daily fast, without reducing their total caloric intake or changing the nutritional quality of their food. The results were astounding. By simply changing the timing of their meals to align with their circadian rhythms and trigger daily autophagy, the subjects completely prevented the onset of metabolic diseases, normalized their glucose tolerance, and reduced systemic inflammatory markers by over 30%. This study proved that giving your digestive system a daily, prolonged rest actively prevents the physiological decay we associate with normal aging. You can imagine your cells as a busy, highly advanced manufacturing plant. If delivery trucks are constantly dropping off raw materials at the loading dock 24 hours a day, the workers are so overwhelmed processing the new inventory that the janitorial staff is never allowed onto the factory floor. Over the years, the trash piles up, the machinery rusts, and the entire plant eventually grinds to a halt. Time-restricted eating is simply locking the loading dock doors for 14 hours a day, finally allowing the cleaning crew to sweep the floors, repair the broken machines, and take out the toxic trash. Your actionable takeaway here is to implement a gentle nightly fasting window into your routine. You do not need to starve yourself or endure week-long fasts. Simply compress your eating time frame, consume your final nutrient-dense meal by 6 o'clock in the evening, completely close the kitchen, and do not consume a single calorie again until 8 o'clock the next morning. During this 14-hour overnight fast, you can drink plain water, black coffee, or unsweetened herbal tea, as these do not trigger an insulin response. This effortless habit requires zero conscious effort while you are sleeping, yet it provides your cells the precise biological signal they need to initiate deep repair and reverse metabolic aging. Moving forward in our biological deep dive, we turn our attention to the physical mechanics of the human body and the continuous biomechanical engine that naturally sweeps toxins from your tissues. When older adults ask their physicians how to maintain their mobility and heart health, the standard response is to purchase a gym membership and endure 30 to 45 minutes of structured, exhausting cardiovascular exercise on a treadmill 3 times a week. While structured exercise has undeniable benefits, this advice is based on a highly industrialized view of human biomechanics that ignores what your body does for the other 23 hours of the day. In modern society, we have engineered movement completely out of our lives. We sit in deeply cushioned recliners to watch television, we sit in our cars, and we sit at our dining tables. When you remain completely sedentary for hours on end, your body enters a state of profound metabolic hibernation. A critical enzyme called lipoprotein lipase, which is responsible for pulling circulating triglycerides out of your bloodstream to be burned for fuel, drops its activity by over 90% within just a few hours of sitting. Furthermore, your lymphatic system, the vast network of vessels that transports white blood cells and removes cellular waste from your tissues, does not have a central pump like the heart. The lymphatic system relies entirely on the continuous physical contraction of your skeletal muscles to push fluid upward against gravity. When you sit still, this toxic fluid violently pools in your lower extremities, leading to chronic swelling, severe joint stiffness, and systemic inflammation. If we observe the daily lives of centenarians in the mountainous regions of Sardinia, Italy, or the Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica, we do not see commercial gyms. We do not see people running marathons or lifting heavy barbells. Instead, we see a lifestyle built around non-exercise activity thermogenesis, or NEAT. These individuals engage in constant, low-grade, purposeful micro-movements throughout their entire day. They knead their own bread, manually tend to their steep, terraced gardens, walk to the local market, and constantly transition from sitting on the floor to standing up. They perpetually keep their muscular engine idling, ensuring their lymphatic fluid continuously circulates and their joints remain bathed in nourishing synovial fluid. The clinical data examining this specific type of continuous movement reveals a massive flaw in our modern approach to fitness. A comprehensive, large-scale epidemiological study published in the highly esteemed American Journal of Epidemiology meticulously tracked the daily activity levels of over 8,000 older adults using objective accelerometers. The researchers discovered a biological reality that challenges the entire fitness industry, replacing just 30 minutes of sedentary sitting time each day with light, incidental physical activity, such as slow walking, light household chores, or active gardening, reduced the absolute risk of all-cause mortality by exactly 17%. The study proved that continuous low-intensity movement throughout the day is an incredibly powerful predictor of longevity. often providing greater baseline metabolic benefits than a single, intense hour at the gym, followed by an entire day of sitting in a chair. You can visualize your cardiovascular and lymphatic systems as a natural body of water. Sitting completely sedentary in a recliner all day is like a stagnant pond. Without continuous movement, the water stops flowing, toxic algae begins to bloom, and the environment becomes hostile to life. Constant, gentle daily movement acts like a rushing mountain stream that continuously flows over the rocks, constantly filtering and cleansing itself, remaining crystal clear and perfectly oxygenated. Your actionable takeaway is to completely abandon the guilt of not wanting to go to a commercial gym, and instead explicitly focus on interrupting your sedentary time. You must implement the concept of movement snacks into your daily life. The goal is to never sit for more than 45 minutes at a time. Set a simple timer on your phone or your stove. When it goes off, you must physically stand up and engage in 3 to 5 minutes of purposeful movement. You can walk up and down your hallway, perform 10 simple counter push-ups against your kitchen island, do a few gentle knee bends, or thoroughly sweep the floor. By practicing habit stacking like doing calf raises while brushing your teeth or pacing the room during television commercials, you actively force your muscles to contract constantly throughout the day. This keeps your metabolic engine actively burning lipids, naturally drains stagnant lymphatic fluid, and significantly extends your cardiovascular lifespan without spending a single dollar on exercise equipment. Finally, we arrive at what is arguably the most profoundly impactful, yet routinely dismissed biological reality of human aging, the psychological armor that physically protects your DNA from fraying. In Western society, reaching your senior years is tragically often accompanied by a profound sense of isolation and a loss of identity. People retire from the careers that define them, their children move away, and they increasingly spend their days entirely alone inside highly modernized, quiet homes. The medical establishment looks at the resulting depression, anxiety, and cognitive decline and immediately reaches for prescription pads, offering synthetic antidepressants to alter brain chemistry. What they completely fail to understand is the deep, primal survival mechanism operating within the human autonomic nervous system. Human beings are biologically wired as a tribal species. Our survival historically depended entirely on our integration within a group. When you are chronically isolated and devoid of a meaningful daily purpose, your ancient brain interprets this isolation as an absolute, immediate threat to your physical survival. This triggers a massive, chronic activation of your hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, placing your body in a perpetual state of sympathetic fight or flight. Your adrenal glands continuously pump the stress hormone cortisol directly into your bloodstream. Chronic, unabated cortisol exposure is highly toxic to your biology. It breaks down muscle tissue, causes severe insulin resistance, and physically shrinks the hippocampus, which is the memory center of your brain, accelerating the onset of dementia. Most terrifyingly, chronic stress directly targets your chromosomes. The ends of your DNA strands are protected by caps called telomeres, which act like the plastic tips on shoelaces. Every time a cell divides, these telomeres get slightly shorter. When they become too short, the cell can no longer divide, enters a state called senescence, and begins secreting inflammatory molecules. Chronic cortisol exposure actively accelerates the shortening of these telomeres, literally causing your cells to age at a terrifying rate. However, centenarians in Okinawa and Loma Linda, California, operate in the exact opposite biological environment. They cultivate deep, lifelong social support networks, known in Okinawa as a moai, where members meet daily to share resources and emotional support. Even more importantly, they are entirely driven by a concept called ikigai, which translates to the reason you get out of bed in the morning. They never truly retire. They simply shift their focus to deeply meaningful, purposeful tasks, whether that is meticulously tending a community garden, caring for their great-grandchildren, or volunteering. This profound sense of belonging and daily purpose physically reaches into their brainstem, completely turns off the sympathetic fight-or-flight response, and activates the parasympathetic nervous system via the vagus nerve, immediately flooding their bodies with healing, anti-inflammatory chemistry. The clinical evidence exposing the absolute physiological necessity of this free psychological intervention is staggering. Nobel Prize-winning research regarding telomere biology was highlighted in a pivotal clinical study published in the journal The Lancet Oncology. The researchers demonstrated that implementing comprehensive lifestyle changes, which heavily prioritize deep social support, community connection, and daily stress reduction techniques, produced a profound genetic response in older adults. The intervention actively increased the specific activity of the telomerase enzyme, the enzyme responsible for rebuilding and maintaining the protective caps on DNA, by a massive 29%. The study proved that deep human connection and psychological peace physically lengthen the telomerase, reversing cellular aging at the most fundamental genetic level. Think of chronic physiological stress as highly corrosive battery acid slowly dripping onto the frayed ends of a thick rope, actively eating away the fibers until the rope inevitably snaps. Cultivating deep social connection and a clear daily purpose acts as a thick, indestructible rubber coating that securely seals the ends of the rope, neutralizing the acid and preventing the strands from ever unraveling. Your profoundly simple, entirely life-changing, actionable takeaway here is to aggressively prioritize your social portfolio with the exact same fierce dedication that you prioritized your financial portfolio during your working years. You must completely reject the narrative that aging means quietly fading into the background. You must actively and deliberately seek out connection and responsibility. Join a local walking club, commit to volunteering at a local food bank or animal shelter twice a week, or organize a regular weekly dinner with your neighbors. Furthermore, you must explicitly define your own personal ikigai. Sit down with a piece of paper and determine a skill you possess that you can teach someone else, or find a small daily responsibility that someone else relies on you to complete. By deliberately weaving yourself into the fabric of a community and waking up every single morning with a non-negotiable mission, you actively silence the deadly stress pathways in your brain, naturally preserve the physical size of your memory centers, and completely bulletproof your chromosomes against the toxic effects of aging. We have explored the intricate physiological realities of human longevity today, stepping far beyond the limitations of simply managing disease with expensive pharmaceuticals. We detailed the precise mechanism of time-restricted eating, explaining how aligning your fasting window with your circadian rhythm deactivates the mTOR pathway and triggers macroautophagy, proven by Salk Institute researchers to reduce inflammatory markers by over 30% and physically clean the toxic debris out of your cells. We examine the biomechanical necessity of non-exercise activity thermogenesis, revealing how constant, low-level micro-movements activate lipoprotein lipase and flush your lymphatic system, which researchers in the American Journal of Epidemiology proved reduces the risk of all-cause mortality by a precise 17%. We also broke down the profound genetic impact of social integration and purpose, showing how stopping the chronic flow of cortisol activates the vagus nerve and stimulates the telomerase enzyme, which the Lancet Oncology documented can increase DNA protection by 29%, reversing aging at the chromosomal level. You do not have to accept the narrative that reaching your senior years dictates a slow, inevitable decline into physical fragility and isolation. Your biological systems are highly responsive and incredibly adaptable. When you understand the biochemistry of cellular recycling, the mechanics of fluid dynamics, and the genetic impact of your nervous system, you regain the physical ability to influence your own health outcomes. You possess the biological machinery to repair your tissues, maintain your mobility, and protect your mind, provided you supply your body with the correct environmental signals. Reaching your 60s and beyond should not be defined by a constant fear of physical breakdown or a reliance on medications that merely suppress the symptoms of a lifestyle mismatch. You have the right to maintain your energy, protect your vital organs, and live a life filled with profound purpose and vibrant independence. I would love to hear your thoughts on the physiological mechanisms we covered today. Please leave a comment below and let me know which of these 3 free longevity rituals makes the most biological sense to you, and how do you plan to incorporate it into your routine this week? If you found this breakdown of the science valuable and empowering, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, because your health is absolutely worth fighting for. Understanding your biology is the very first step toward reclaiming your independence. Keep asking questions, keep challenging the standard medical advice when it fails to address the root cause, and remember that you possess the capacity to build a stronger, more resilient foundation for a long and joyful life at any age.